I've been looking for a quote unquote perfect segue into this conversation for quite a while at this point, right? I believe that maybe one day I would come across a piece of content that I could then cover and give my opinion on, or, just something would come up in the public conversation that would get me to actually break this down. But I woke up this morning and I had that to hell with it sort of attitude. If we're going to talk about it, let's just talk about it straight up. Is gentrification racist? Now, many people would assert that gentrification is indeed racist. And the reason for this is not only because of the propaganda, though it has done a majority of the legwork, but it's also in part because when you look at it from the surface, it looks like it is affecting quote unquote black and brown people, or as in now been labeled as POCs, right? People of color. Why is it that when an area is gentrified, and for anybody who doesn't know what gentrification looks like, it is essentially when you have, let's say, a quote unquote urban area, a rundown area, a lower income area that increases in value. Therefore, those who cannot afford those new prices or to live in such an environment, a neighborhood, whatever it may be, are essentially quote unquote kicked out of that space. Now, that idea seems to be targeted to a specific group of people if you continuously see that very same group of people ousted from those said communities. However, what I've come to realize looking at this thing objectively is that gentrification is racist. If your perspective is that everything is racist or is racism when you see some sort of disproportionate effects on one group as opposed to another, right? The causation, correlation, causation conversation. It's like, well, because it's less black people, it must mean that it is racism. Because there are more black people suffering from X, Y, and Z, it must mean that it's racism. There are those who see almost everything. Scratch that. Who see everything with this sort of relationship as racist. So when they see a neighborhood start to improve in quality and they see black and brown people leaving those neighborhoods, being quote unquote kicked out of those neighborhoods, being priced out of those neighborhoods, they see that as racism. When in reality, what is happening is there is an improvement, first off, in the quality of life. There's a reason why people are willing to invest more into a place, right? Is because they see potential and promise in that place. Nobody wants to actually live in a dangerous environment. It's just that some people have settled for it. And that's a conversation probably for another time. But when you see, let's say, like my parents right now, they moved into a new part of the state that they're in. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's nobody's business. But they moved into a place that's a little more rural. A little more small town, etc. I think they're looking to retire in this sort of place, whatever retirement looks like for, my dad who works every day of his life. But anyway, this neighborhood started with just a few homes, mostly rural. Now there are a few houses popping up and they actually bought the newest house in the area. Now I've just been updated that they're going to be building a few more homes in this area, and they're actually looking to do so in the entire region. The entire town is looking to build up, and therefore the pricing is going to go up. Like parts of the town that they're living in, are kind of crackish. They're crackish environments, and it's actually disproportionately white people. Go figure, right? Lower income white folks. Those people are going to be priced out at some point, and they're going to be replaced by whoever can afford those specific environments, whoever has the necessary capital to live in that environment. This also happened in my parents' old neighborhood when they were living in California in the Bay Area. There was a time when a majority of that neighborhood was Caucasian. I came back to visit them down the road, and all of a sudden the neighborhood had become majoritively Chinese, Japanese, and Indian. Heavy on the Indian population. And it had become higher property values, etc. There were families living there. It had become even more suburban, but there were scarcely any white people. Now, there were already basically no black folks who were living there when they first got there, right? This is the Bay Area. I think they have like 3% population is black. And, you have to go to Oakland and places like that, Berkeley, Richmond. So they were away from all of that. But lo and behold, white folks were quote unquote gentrified out of those environments. They could not afford those new prices. Now, some may say, well, this is a classist thing, etc. I just happen to not be given over to that victim mentality. I believe that if I don't like the way in which something is going, then I'm going to change my circumstance. Either I'm going to do something different in order to make more money to live in the places I truly want to live, or I'm going to compromise and live in the place that I'm willing to, to essentially work for. And I'm not saying that hard work is the only answer. It's working at the right things, creating value in the marketplace, taking risks and things of that nature. Not everybody's willing to do and not everybody's forced to do. But to say that it is racism that is pushing these people out because they're black, they're being pushed out of certain environments in this modern age, in this day and age, the year of our Lord 2025, when you see a place turn from a majoritively impoverished area just so happens to be black and brown people, because these are the people who have essentially at mass, at scale, accepted this to be normal. Let's get into that conversation. The cultural acceptance of poverty, the cultural acceptance of staying in that welfare system. I'm not just saying, you're on Section 8 food stamps, etc. Because, you always like to talk about, well, there's more white people who are taking food stamps than black people. Yeah, well, we can talk per capita all day. But the acceptance at a mass level, well, black people aren't getting the jobs because of racism. No, it's because of this idea of racism that stops you from actually going out there and doing anything different. It's a confirmation bias, manifest destiny, right? If I continue to view the world from a lens of I can't do something because of I'm black, I can't do something because of white man, I can't do something because of whatever reason. If I fight for my limitations will stay in place. And so you have a demographic of people who have chosen for themselves that, well, we're going to be in lower income housing as opposed to mobilizing ourselves upward. And I'm saying this with full clarity, and I'm saying this with full confidence, is because I have seen a multitude of black folks uplift themselves. I'm talking about come from dire straits and get into the upper middle class. I have seen people become wealthy, whether building businesses or high income skills that have created for high income employment. The doctors and the lawyers amongst us. There are multitudes of black folks who have moved themselves out of those environments, started their landscaping companies, plumbing, electricians, all sorts of stuff, corporate world, etc. But yet at a mass level, the reason why it looks like it is just specifically about race is because most black folk at this point are still living in this victim mentality that perpetuates the very same lifestyle or the very same socioeconomic class. And I'll say this for any and everybody. If you keep yourself in that victim mentality, blaming everybody else for your condition in life, you will never uplift yourself. You will never rise above it. I don't know when it became racist to say, lift yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't know when it ever became problematic to say something like that, because that's the mentality that leads an individual to actually do something different that's going to lead to different outcomes. Gentrification is not racist to the person who's looking at it objectively. If I want to live in the best possible environment, I have to do what is financially required to live in those environments. I did a video not too long ago. A young lady, she's parked in the suburbs. She said she was driving around the area of her college campus to find somewhere to eat, and she landed in a beautiful neighborhood, happened to be a suburb, and she said she saw mostly white people outside. And her summation was that the reason why there's shade, all these trees, it's, families and things of that nature is because of racism. That was her outcome. That's the danger of that mentality. Instead of looking at it as, oh, wait, the environment is this way because the people treat their environment in this way, right? It's this way because these individuals have a different mentality. The way they view their environment or they view themselves and therefore their environment is different than the ones in the hood. It's different than the ones in the projects, different than the ones in Section 8 housing. Section 8 housing doesn't actually have to be nasty and the projects don't have to be filthy. That's a choice. The people living there don't value it. And I've been around the cities and I've seen how people devalue the places that they live. That's the mentality that some of these people will have. Then you go into other places, may not be wealthy, but they have a respect for the environment. Small towns, rural places, the so-called races, but yet guess what? They're taking care of their environments. And then there are others who don't. It's a mentality thing. It's not a race thing. Well, it's disproportionately affecting. Okay, fantastic. We've gotten down to the statistic itself. Can we get down to the reason why it is so? Because we have accepted, I can't say we, because I'm not a part of this class of individuals, because I've chosen different for myself. But those who are affected most are those who believe that they can never live in such an environment, who believe they can never live in the new, Bronx or the new Oakland or, whatever else is getting currently, quote unquote, gentrified. The new Palo Alto, which went from one of the murder capitals in California, if not nationwide, to having 0 homicides in a year after being gentrified. Is that not the goal? Is that not the outcome that we want? Why do we want to accept criminality? Why do we want to accept broken environments, destructive, destitute environments? Why is that acceptable? Because that's the mentality. That's the ghetto mentality. Gentrification has nothing to do with race, not in its modern context. Yes, it has everything to do with class, but guess what? That's something you can actually change. I know there's a lot of people who feel disenfranchised, white and black, left and right. I understand. I get it. I was broker than a joke. For years of my life, broker than a joke, until I made different decisions to do something different. And some people watch me here be like, oh, he's lazy. He just talks for a living. Yeah, guess what? I figured out what I do best and I gave that to the marketplace and I'm rewarded for it. I'm sick and tired of this communist mentality. I'm sick and tired of the envy and the jealousy. Do something for yourself. Lift yourself up by your bootstraps. Black man, white man, black woman, white woman, whatever the hell you want to label and quantify yourself as. These nonsense labels that we have to continuously use in order to reference. Do something different. I'm working hard. I work harder than any of these billionaires. Guess what? They chose something that had a greater value in the marketplace. Do that. Well, they just came from rich families. Less than 20% of the wealthy class came from that money. The ones with substantial amounts of wealth today. 80% of that population are self-made. Well, self-made. They have they got a loan from their daddy. Okay, take $20 and turn it into $100. The folks love to talk about dudes like Trump. He got a loan. Okay, let's say he got $10 million a loan. And then he ends up with $4 billion as net worth, $3 billion as net worth. I would challenge you to 500x the money you have right now, because it's so easy. I would challenge you to take the $10 that you have right now and 500x it. And then we can have that conversation. Change your mentality and you change your life. It is envy that keeps people in that very same stuck place, which is I want what somebody else has, turns into jealousy, which is I don't want them to have what they have. As opposed to taking notes and learning from these people. That's what I done. I learned from them. You know what I do? This is what I do. This is real time. I educate myself. This is what I'm reading right now. Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman. You saw the word capitalism, you jumped out your damn seat. Instead of complaining about money, learn about it. Instead of complaining about the economy, learn how economies work. Instead of complaining and crying about the game, learn how to play the game efficiently, well, with good upstanding morals, dignity. Oh, well, that can't be done. No, it can. And it is almost the only way that you can sustain a long-term success. That's why we always hear the story of the crooked and evil millionaire, billionaire, etc. Those are far and few between. You know how I know? Because you can't survive in the marketplace if you're that corrupt. You can't survive in the marketplace. I didn't say politics. Oh, politics is a different game. You can't survive selling a product that's garbage for too long before you're found out. You can't continue to run Ponzi schemes on people until you're found out. But they push those images. They push those messages. I know I'm getting into a little bit of a deviation, but it still ties in. So hear me out. We have been programmed to view wealth, to view the wealthy as bad, as evil, and then to view ourselves as unworthy. That's a perfect combination to create a poor class. For you to never aspire greater than where you currently are. For you to see yourself as incapable, unable to uplift yourself. And when you have that belief system, oh baby, is it going to be impossible for you to do anything of significance within your life. And it's not all about money. It's about freedom. There's a man making $80K a year and he's living at $40,000 a year. Freedom. There's one making millions and spending millions. Not freedom. Likely insecurity that's leading them to spend over what they have. We have to change our mentalities, change our behaviors, change our attitudes, and we can see things for what they truly are. Is gentrification racism? Only to the mind that is fixated on everything being racism in order to confirm its own bias that the world is against me and I can do nothing. That's where it's racism. But in reality, no, it is improved conditions. And that's something we should all aspire towards. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up. You know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises. You get to praising.